think it's obvious that sometimes a composer just wants to overcharge the listener, and I would say that this kind of hysterical breakdowns make an indispensable feature of Chopin's music in general. So I want to talk about how such a climax is being constructed through certain specific devices, like chromatic mediants and rather flamboyant executions of German sixth chords. All in all, romantic cliches that I'm gonna dive in a little deeper, so see you back in a few seconds.
Your commercials, they suck ass. So you better act in an epileptic whorehouse.
Is that like the one your mom works at?
Maybe it's good to know what a chromatic median relation actually is, because this plays a certain role in this video. Let's take F major as key center, with the constitutional fifths relations above and below. In the middle of two chords that are related by the fifth lies the mediant, and that's exactly what the term median means. In the middle. These are called diatonic medians, because they can be generated from the same home scale, and those always have two tones in common. And modulating into one of those is a no-brainer, as you can just use a secondary dominant and confirm afterwards. With the chromatic medians though, it's a little more complex. If you manipulate a diatonic framework by adding accidentals, it becomes chromatic. For example, as major chords related by a minor third or a major third. And those chord relations sound a little more flamboyant as there is no diatonic connection anymore. And the contrast of color when you connect those chords is much brighter than in the diatonic relations, and you really can feel the distance. You got the point. And I guess we're finally prepared for the Chopin. So let's try to understand what's actually happening. The passage leading into the actual outburst establishes 5-1 pendulums above ascending bass lines. And whilst this pendulum is cooking, Chopin is increasing the tension on two other parameters gradually, before suddenly erupting into a great major key cadence, plus doubling down on a chromatic median right away. It makes a lot of sense to categorize the actual climax as a succession of two separate cadences. The first one related to E major and the second one, surprisingly, to A flat major. More accurately, G sharp major, as the more convenient notation in A flat conceals the actual mediant relation between those keys. Now the legitimate harmonic connection between those two cadences takes place within the fraction of a second, as Chopin smuggles in the D natural on the last beat of the E major bar, which turns it into an E7, but that's being resolved as a German sixth chord instantly. And that's actually quite a lot of harmonic information to digest for such a brief moment, when you take into account that already the E major cadence pretty much came as a sudden surprise. Bending a major triad into a German sixth chord and resolve it into a cadential 6/4 that lies a semitone below is actually an easy pattern to memorize for a chromatic median modulation. this modulation can actually be practiced in cycles. When you repeat the procedure 2 times the same way, it'll lead you back into the key you started from. And that's called a major third cycle, in which the roots of each of the participating keys form an augmented triad. In other words, the 3 chords on top here make up a little family of chromatic mediants. Needless to say,
La familia es todo.
And it was actually these bars that inspired the following little improv exercise. Maybe let's take the occasion and check out some more flamboyant stuff on the German 6th chord, and you know I like to share my own experiments. The German 6th chord makes especially a good deal breaker to dissolve a chromatic field or sequence with a triumphant gesture. And in the following example, I'm trying to intensify the situation by using the German 6th chord modulation twice within a relatively short time span to create harmonic overcharge. If you want to create this kind of effect, it's important to know that it is always the cadential 6/4 that locks in the new key, and which usually is the pinnacle and actual target of the climax. I admit that this one is a rather synthetical example, as the harmonic plan is kinda random, so I decided to set myself a more demanding compositional task by composing a coda to a hypothetical piece in D major. And you probably know that the codas are this kind of situations where you pull the more special devices out of the trunk. Let's listen. I'm trying to give you a quick rundown. I began the coda by settling D major as home key on a pedal point with a dominant tonic pendulum on top of it. Then, all of a sudden, I just throw in a chord that anyone listening probably would perceive as dominant 7th chord, but as you can see on the paper, it is a German 6th chord related to A minor. There is no real functional connection here, but broken down into the sheer chords, you can see that this chord progression is actually the result of a voice leading procedure that can be described as chromatic contrary motion of the outer voices. This minor 6/4 chord marks the beginning of a real sequence of alternating minor 6/4 chords and a diminished 7th chord a semitone below. When chained up like this, you obtain a bass line that descends by semitones. The actual climax of this coda takes place when that sequence runs into a 5/1 pendulum in E flat, and I guess here at latest the listener lost harmonic orientation due to the preceding sequence. And confirming a distant key like E flat by a dominant pendulum seems kinda off. But there is a quick way out, because the dominant of E flat can as well be used as the German 6th chord in the context of D major. And And that's what I'm gonna do. So when it swings to the dominant the third time, I bend it over into the cadential 6/4 of D major and the party's over. Maybe let's give it another listen.